Good morning. As coordinator of the sophomore English program, I'd like to welcome you all to the finals of this year's Form 4 Speakers Forum. For well over 20 years, this has been a signature event of the Form 4 English curriculum. It is the brainchild of former English teacher and Forensic Union founder, Mr. Robert Guggens, who adapted the criteria of interpretive reading, a public speaking event he had coached with many different Forensic Union teams and judged in many different speaking competitions, to fit the KO curriculum. Mr. Guggens served on the KO faculty for 40 years, teaching English, advising the Forensic Union, and coaching a variety of sports to literally thousands of students. Known for his eloquence and unflappable nature, Bob Guggens was often called upon to speak at or serve as master of ceremonies for various functions here at school, including the Speakers Forum Finals. Often playful and always full of good humor, Mr. Guggens would frequently pepper his remarks and introductions with witty observations, puns, or good jokes. In his honor, over the years, our masters of ceremonies have tried to do the same, as they have hosted this final round of the Speakers Forum competition. Mr. Guggens passed away just this past February, and in honor and memory of his service to the school, as well as to his devotion to the Forensic Union and the Speakers Forum, this annual event has been renamed the Robert Guggens Speakers Forum. His wife, Carol, who is with us here this morning, has been gracious in allowing us to honor Mr. Guggens in this way, and we thank her for that. This is the 5th year that the entire upper school has been here to listen to this final round. I hope you juniors and seniors have fond memories of your Speakers Forum experience, something that this year's freshmen can look forward to for next year. And now, to take us through this final round and to explain a bit about the Speakers Forum is Connor O'Laughlin, experienced public speaker and longtime member of the Forensic Union, who recently returned from the World Speaking and Debating Competition in Australia, breaking to the final round in, of all things, interpretive reading. Connor.
Okay, so the 5 finalists you're going to hear this morning have been chosen by their peers and their English teachers at class and in the semifinals that they took place yesterday afternoon. At the semis, a panel of faculty and student judges determined who would break into the finals. I'm going to go through and introduce our judges. We have Mrs. Biscard, Dr. Briggs, Miss Edwards, Mr. Kife, and then Forensic Union officers Izzy Pratt and Noah Stanton. Thank you, Noah. The judges are going to be ranking these competitors based on the quality and helpfulness of their introduction, something that they wrote themselves to kind of introduce their piece, polish and familiarity with their work, understanding of selection, voice quality, diction, quality of delivery, and appeal of selection. The speakers have drawn lots to determine the order of their speaking. The first speaker is John V. Second. You can clap. She worked hard to get here. All right. Come on up, John V., whenever you're ready.
This is slippery. Everyone here knows the pressures of getting good grades and trying to ace the SAT, but that's just standard high school protocol, isn't it? Well, Chuck Palahniuk's short story Zombie explores what happens when the highest achievers find a shocking way to beat the system. It was Griffin Wilson who proposed the theory of de-evolution. He sat 2 rows behind me in class. He was the first to take the great leap backwards. Everybody knows because Trisha Getting was in the nurse's office with him. She said she heard the loud beep, but didn't think anything of it. When she and the nurse found him on his own cot, they thought it was a joke because his wallet was still clenched between his teeth and he still had the electrical wires pasted to either side of his forehead. His hands were still holding a dictionary-sized box, paralyzed, pressing a big red button. Everyone's seen this box so often that they hardly recognized it, the defibrillator. He must have taken it down and read the instructions. It's basically a peel and stick lobotomy. It's so easy, a 16-year-old could do it. The problem with being talented and gifted is sometimes you get too smart. Griffin Wilson knew the SATs are just the gateway to a big lifetime of bullshit. You could ask Griffin anything and he'd know the answer, but what he really wanted was to be happy, not just not sad. He wanted to be and not to be, but at the same time. And since that day in the nurse's office, Griffin Wilson's never seemed happier. He's always giggling too loud and wiping spit off his chin. The rest of us are fighting tooth and nail for whatever garbage career we can get. Talk about a double standard. Before, he was miserable unless he won every chess tournament. Now, he's the life of the party. The voltage even cleared up his acne. It's hard to argue with results like that. It wasn't a week after he'd turned zombie that Trisha Getting got the defibrillator off the wall in the locker room. Her best friend got the defibrillator at the Home Depot, and now they walk, rain or shine, with no pants on. We're not talking about the scum of the school here. We're talking the best and the brightest. It's suicide, but it's not. The newspaper won't report the actual numbers. My Uncle Henry looks up from the paper and asks, "If all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you?" He won't acknowledge it, but there's a good life over that cliff. He doesn't understand that all my friends have already jumped. After pushing the red button, yeah, a person suffers some consequences, but he doesn't know he's suffering. For a long time, I listened to my uncle and didn't jump. Anymore, I don't know. To have no worries, no regrets, it's pretty appealing. So many of the smart kids at my school have elected to self-fry that only the losers are left. That's how come my Uncle Henry is shipping me off. He thinks that by relocating me, he can postpone the inevitable. So we're sitting at the airport, and I go to the bathroom. I look in the mirror when, there it is, my ticket to a gloriously happy future working in fast food. That's opposed to a miserable life as an architect or surgeon. It's reflected in the mirror, a cardiac defibrillator. It's mounted on the wall in back of me, shut inside a metal case. Opening the case, I automatically set off the alarm. In my grasp, here's my permanent childhood, my very own bliss machine. My fingers know to peel the electrodes and paste them to my temples. My thumbs hover over the button like this is a video game. One push and the world as I know it comes to an end. Before I can blast off, I picture my uncle holding his boarding pass. He deserves to know that this is not his fault. With the electrode stuck to my forehead, I carry the defibrillator out of the bathroom and walk towards the gate. My hands carry the battery pack in front of me like a suicide bomber. Who's only gonna blow up all my IQ points? When they catch sight of me, people abandon their bags and herd their little kids in the other direction. Some guy shouts, "Everything's gonna be all right. You have everything to live for." We both know he's a liar. When they catch sight of me, my face is sweating hard. Here's my last chance to say everything that's on my mind, so with everyone watching, I'll confess. I don't know what's a happy ending, and I don't know how to fix anything. Doors open and Homeland Security soldiers storm out. From out of nowhere, my uncle grabs my arm and he says, "If you hurt yourself, you hurt me." I tell him, "This isn't so tragic." I say, "I'll keep loving you, Uncle Henry. I just won't know who you are." Instead of saving me, people pull out their phones and start shooting video. My Uncle Henry repeats, "If you hurt yourself, you hurt me too." Some lady steps up and grabs my uncle's other arm. This new Person says, if you hurt yourself, you hurt me as well. Somebody else grabs that lady, and somebody grabs the last somebody until we're all connected together. Everyone's holding on to everyone, and their voices repeat the same sentence. Other people in other places, total strangers, start to say, if you hurt yourself, you hurt me. And the kids behind the cash register at the food court, they stop and hold hands with someone connected to me across this vast crowd, and they say it too. On the televisions mounted by the ceiling, the announcer puts a finger to his ear like to hear better, and even he says, breaking news? He looks confused, obviously reading something off cue cards, and he says, if you hurt yourself, you hurt me? And voices come over the walkie-talkies of the Homeland Security guard saying, if you hurt yourself, you hurt me. Do you copy? By that point, there's not a big enough defibrillator in the universe to scramble all of our brains. And eventually, yeah, we'll all have to let go, but for another moment, everyone's holding tight, trying to make this connection last forever. This isn't exactly the end. On every TV is me, sweating so hard an electrode slowly slides down one side of my face. This certainly isn't the happy ending that I had in mind, but compared to where the story began, with Griffin Wilson putting his wallet in between his teeth like a gun, well, maybe this isn't such a bad place to start.
Thank you very much, Janvi. That was great. Oh, I love that. Janvi goes to Forensic Union. So does Dan. You should also come to Forensic Union. All right, so I have a lot of these weird sort of ideas that I build up in my head, kind of plans for like projects or products, and I don't know whether they're good or not. So I figure, where's a better place to kind of crowd test them than right here in front of a giant, massive audience? So I'm going to just sort of run through some of them, and you can sort of tell me whether they're good or not. All right, so first is like a one-act play of a parent-teacher conference, typical blue-collar American family, for their son, Jesus, the second coming of Christ. Now, their son, Jesus, he's been a little bit of a problem child. I even heard that he snuck in wine in a water bottle to school. I don't know how that happened. Thank you. Yeah, something like that. All right, I have another play, too. It's Hamlet, but redone so that every part is played by Swedish Chef from the Muppets. How about a movie? So it's like a buddy comedy with a robber and a man he was attempting to rob. So the robber goes to rob this man's house. The man inside the house shoots the robber. They both go to the same prison. But through a series of hilarious mishaps, they get over their differences and learn the only thing more powerful than the judicial system is friendship. Here's one for a musical focusing on a gang war, this time between rival Florida retirement homes. Now, in this movie, we have these parodies of gang violence featuring drive-bys through golf carts, scenes of drug use where everyone has those little like boxes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with their vitamin pills in them, and no actors under the age of 75. All right, so I also have this idea for a bunch of products, like a chain, something that you could buy in places. They're party favors, party items, like like a banner, a balloon, a cake, and they're all branded with the words, "Get out of my house." So like you would come to a party, you go inside, excited to have a good time, and then all of a sudden, "Get out of my house" is just written right on the big banner. I also have a book for a joke self-help book. Here this way, it's a self-help book. You go through, you read it. It's nice ways where you can learn to increase your enjoyment of life, except it's a guide of how to do terrible things, like how to commit espionage or effectively strangle someone. Here's another movie for I'm getting the little signal to wrap it up, so at this time, let's introduce the next speaker, Dan Carroll, another Forensic Union favorite.
There's a lot of animal-themed media out there. We all know the classics like Animal Farm, Curious George, and Clifford the Big Red Dog. However, David Sedaris' Squirrel Seeks Chipmunk is a clear subversion of a typical children's storybook. Revolving around anthropomorphic animals, the stories are funny, mature, and self-aware. For example, mine is about two birds returning from their Central American vacation. Others are about a baboon hairdresser or a bear who uses tragedy for attention. What connects all these stories is Sedaris' ability to write characters that are distinct yet relatable while still maintaining a storybook charm. This is The Migrating Warblers by David Sedaris. The yellow warbler would often claim that she was fine, until she hit Brownsville. Then, wham, she'd tell her friends. I don't know if it's the air or what, but whenever we pass it on our migration, I just have to stop and puke my guts out. Indeed she does, her husband would say, laughing. An hour or two's rest is all I need, but isn't it strange? Not Olmedo or Bayview or Indian Lake, but Brownsville. Brownsville every time. The bird she was talking to would try to sound sympathetic, or at the very least, interested. They'd say, or Brownsville, I think I have a cousin there. From the southern tip of Texas, the couple would fly over Mexico and then into Central America. My family's been wintering in Guatemala for as long as I can remember, the warbler would explain. Every year like clockwork, here we come by the tens of thousands. But do you think any of those Spanish-speaking birds have bothered learning English? Not on your life. It's really horrible, the husband would say. Well, funny too, his wife would insist. Horrible and funny. Like one time I asked this little Guatemalan bird, I said, ¿Dónde estás las grandes moscas de cabeza? Here, her listeners would cock their heads, confused and more than a little impressed. Wait a second, you speak that stuff? Oh, I've picked some stuff up, the warbler would say in that offhand way of hers. I mean, really, what choice do I have? I guess I'm a pretty quick study. At least I've been told I am. She's terrific with languages, her husband would boast, and his wife would raise a wing in protest. Well, not always. In this particular case, for instance, I thought I'd ask where all the big horseflies were. A reasonable question, only instead of cab ayo, which is horse, I said cab aza. So what I really asked was, where are all the big head flies? Thinking that this was the end of her story, her listeners would quake with polite laughter. Head flies, oh, that's rich. But no, wait, the warbler would say. So the Guatemalan bird makes a motion for me to follow him through the thicket. I do, and there in this field are like 300 heads rotting in the afternoon sun, each one with about 50 flies on it. And I mean huge, the size of bumblebees, every one of them. Oh my God, the listeners would say, rotting heads with flies on them? Oh, they weren't bird heads, the warbler would reassure them. These belong to humans, or used to anyway. Flesh bubbling off, hair all tangled with bits of goo in it. I don't know what they'd done with the bodies. Burn them, maybe? Then they used the heads to make a wall. Actually, it was more of a counter, the husband would say. It was a wall, if there ever was one, but what could you do? Ask everyone to stop up their ears while you and your ridiculous mate, someone who had never even seen a counter except in pictures, scream at each other for half an hour? No, it was best just to breeze over it. So we see this wall, this counter, be it, made of human heads, and I mean to say, this place stinks like the devil. But what I actually say is, and here, snorting with laughter, she would pass the baton to her husband. What she actually says to this small Guatemalan bird is, the devil smells me in my place. Can you believe it? My mate, ladies and gentlemen, or, as we like to call her south of the border, Satan's sexy stink pot. The listeners would crack up, and the warblers, husband and wife, would enjoy the sensation of having an audience right where they wanted them. This was the reward for spending 3 months a year in an inferior country. And when the light fell a certain way, when the laughter surged and melded into a harmonious song, it almost made up for all the hardships. The stomach flus, for instance, or the times when, rather uniting you and your mate, the strangeness of another culture only made you feel more separate, more despicable, and alone. Back in their element, the two Warblers were a well-oiled machine. "You want funny? Try getting work done down there," the husband would say, opening the door to their hilarious tales of lazy natives, of how backward they were, how bumbling and superstitious. This begged the question, why go in the first place? Why not winter in Florida like everyone else? The Warblers would then explain that despite the incompetence, despite the language barriers and the severed heads, Central America was, in its own way, beautiful. And cheap, they would add. Cheap, cheap, cheap.
Excellent job, Dan. It's hard to go wrong with David Sedaris. It's a classic for any interpretive reading. All right. So that idea that I was going through and addressing last time is an idea for a film about a high school junior going through the college admissions process, except for last year he had been turned into a meme on the internet. One of his reactions, something gets him turned into a meme, and then he goes through trying to get all these applications into different schools, and of course he's known as not applicant number whatever, but as Tuba Kid or some kind of stupid meme. Now this idea, this next one here, is actually a great one, and I think kind of relates to this because it's sort of English themed. So I didn't know this until fairly recently, but the onomatopoeia that we use in the English language is not the same as other languages. Like one of the first things that you learn when you're like 7 years old, or probably before 7, like 4, is like, oh, the cow goes moo. Well, in Germany, the cow doesn't go moo, the cow goes wazoo. And if you're going to go from Germany and learn English, that's not one of the things that you think to learn, trying to pick it up. So what I would do is categorize all of the English onomatopoeia in an encyclopedia of onomatopoeia, which is in itself a little bit of a mouthful. But if you ever need to know what the definition of like bang, bam, boom, crash, bash, smash, like all those, you can go through and look it up in the Pocket Encyclopedia of Onomatopoeia. I like that one. Thank you, Ms. Kasparek. All right, okay. So at this point, I'm going to go through and do a couple puns because I felt like torturing you. All right, so this morning, I actually had a bit of an eye-opening experience. I woke up. Thank you. You grade. So I didn't know that my father was a construction thief, but today I came home and all the signs were there. So, a gravedigger's apprentice asks his teacher to critique his most recent work. The teacher responds, "I think you still have a lot of ground to cover." That was a groan. All right. So, wrapping it up here, we're going to introduce the third speaker, Erin Bowen.
At least 1/3 of all female homicide victims in the U.S. are killed by male intimate partners. This statistic is why Nick Dunn is the lead suspect in the investigation of his wife's disappearance. The reason for her mysterious vanishing, however, is not what the crime scene implies. Amy Dunn is a mastermind of detail and planning. Once aware of her husband's infidelity, she begins the year-long endeavor of framing him for her murder, during which she assumes an alternate persona, Diary Amy, as part of her scheme to mislead detectives. Despite what the cops are led to believe, Amy Dunn is alive, and her husband is innocent, of murder at least. In the thrilling novel Gone Girl, Gillian Flynn masterfully plunges the reader into the mind of a scorned woman with no limit to what she'll do. After all, maybe the cheater has it coming for him. I'm so much happier now that I'm dead. Technically missing, soon to be presumed dead, but as shorthand for now, we'll say dead. It's been only a matter of hours, but I feel better already. At one point this morning, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I realized I was smiling. That's new. My checklist for today sits beside me in the passenger seat. A spot of blood right next to item 22. Cut myself. But Amy is afraid of blood. the diary readers will say. Yes, we'll get to my brilliant diary. No, I'm not, but for the past year I've been saying I am. Don't fret, we'll sort this out. The true and the not true and the might as well be true. It takes a very special discipline to slice oneself past the paper cut layer down to the muscle. You want a lot of blood, but not so much that you pass out, get discovered hours later in a kiddie pool of red with a lot of explaining to do. I held a box cutter to my wrist first, but I ended up cutting into the inside of my upper arm, gnawing on a rag so I wouldn't scream. One long, deep, good one, letting the blood drizzle steadily until I'd made a nice thick puddle. Then, I cleaned it up as poorly as Nick would have done after he bashed my head in. I can tell you more about how I did everything, but I'd like you to know me first. Not Diary Amy, who is a work of fiction, but me, actual Amy. I began to think of a different story that would destroy Nick for doing this to me. A story that would restore my perfection. Because everyone loves the dead girl. It's rather extreme, framing your husband for your murder. I want you to know I know that. I won't divorce him because that's exactly what he'd like, and I won't forgive him because I don't feel like turning the other cheek. So I may have gone a bit mad, but it's so very necessary. I think this experience will make him a better person, or at least a sorrier one. Fucker. I hope you liked Diary Amy. She was meant for someone like you to like her. She's easy to like. And it wasn't simple. I had to maintain an affable, if somewhat naive persona, all the while leading the cops toward the conclusion that Nick was indeed planning to kill me. Nick always mocked my endless lists, but who wins here? I win. Because my list, entitled Fuck Nick Dunn, was the most complete, fastidious list that has ever been created. On my list was write diary entries for 2005 to 2012. Do you know how much discipline that takes? Would cool girl Amy be able to do that? It was fun, mostly. I'd wait for Nick to go leave for the bar or to go meet his mistress, the ever-texting, gum-chewing, vapid mistress with her acrylic nails and the sweatpants with the logos across the butt. She isn't like this exactly, but she might as well be. And I'd pick one of my 32 different pens and rewrite myself a little. 152 entries total. She is designed to appeal to the cops, to the public. They have to like me. Her. Nick destroyed and rejected the real me a piece at a time. You're too serious, Amy. You're too uptight, Amy. He took away chunks of me with blasé swipes. My independence, my pride. I gave and he took, and took. He killed my soul, which should be a crime. Actually, it is a crime, according to me.
Excellent job. That was great. All right, so I'm going to continue through a little bit with the puns, but first I'd just like to say thank you to all the teachers here at KO, because I feel for you. Teaching is a hard job. And a lot of the times, scoring tests for underachieving students is degrading. Yes, grown away, people. It's fine. All right, so I was going to tell you all an experience about me using a power drill, but I thought that it would be boring, so I'm not going to. Thank you. Yeah, you know, recent scientific research has suggested that the best time to meet with somebody is 11:17, because that is the prime time. I heard that the police have been in a months-long search for someone who stole a board game. I don't know about you, but to me that seems like a trivial pursuit. Thank you. Yeah, have you ever noticed how some people use observational humor? That's my favorite one, and no one likes it. All right, okay. I heard that I already read that one. At first, I wasn't a fan of organ transplants, but then I went and had a change of heart. Yesterday, somebody stole my inhaler. I was shocked. You could say it was a breathtaking experience. When I was looking up these puns and I was writing them down, I became frustrated. I was trying to use a thesaurus, but it was a bad thesaurus. It was so bad that it was bad. So a rabbi walks into a bar. Mitzvah. All right, that's it. Let's introduce the next speaker here, Sophie Overstreet. Thank you.
What would you sacrifice for your brother or sister? Would you die for them? In The Hunger Games by Susan Colin, Katniss lives in one of the 12 outlying districts surrounding the capital. And each year, one boy and one girl from each district is sent as a tribute to participate in the Hunger Games, a fight to the death with only one survivor. In Katniss's district, being chosen as a tribute is seen as a death sentence. However, when Katniss's sister Prim is chosen to be one of this year's tributes, Katniss immediately steps forward to take her place in the games, in an act of true sacrifice and compassion. I chose this piece not only for its literary merit for winning 4 awards, but because it shows how we reveal our true character during difficult times. This is an excerpt from The Hunger Games. It's time for the drawing, Effie Trinket says, as she always does. Ladies first, and crosses to the glass ball with the girls' names. She reaches in, digs her hand deep into the ball, and pulls out a slip of paper. The crowd draws in a collective breath, and then you can hear a pin drop. And I'm feeling nauseous and so desperately hoping that it's not me, that it's not me, that it's not me. Effie Trinket crosses back to the podium, smooths the slip of paper, and reads out the name in a clear voice. And it's not me. It's Primrose Everdeen. One time, when I was in a tree waiting motionless for game to wander by, I dozed off and fell 10 feet to the ground, landing on my back. It was as if the impact had knocked every wisp of air from my lungs, and I lay there, struggling to inhale, to exhale, to do anything. That's how I feel now, trying to remember how to breathe, unable to speak, totally stunned as the name bounces around the inside of my skull. Someone is gripping my arm, a boy from the seam, and I think maybe I started to fall and he caught me. There must have been some mistake. This can't be happening. Prim was one slip in thousands. Her chances of being chosen so remote that I not even bothered to worry about her. Hadn't I done everything? Taken the terrace, refused to let her do the same. One slip in thousands. The odds had been entirely in her favor, but it hadn't mattered. Somewhere far away, I can hear the crowd murmuring unhappily, as they always do, when a 12-year-old gets chosen because no one thinks this is fair. And then I see her. Blood drained from her face, hands clenched into fists at her sides. Walking with stiff, small steps up towards the stage, passing me. And I see the back of her blouse has become untucked and hangs out over her skirt. It's this detail, the untucked blouse forming a ducktail, that brings me back to myself. Prim! The strangled cry comes out of my throat and my muscles begin to move again. Prim! I don't need to shove through the crowd. The other kids make way immediately, allowing me a straight path towards the stage. I reach her just as she's about to mount the steps. With one sweep of my arm, I push her behind me. I volunteer! I gasp. I volunteer as tribute. Lovely, says Effie Trinket. Prim is screaming hysterically behind me. She wrapped her skinny arms around me like a vice. No, Katniss, no, you can't go. Prim, let go. I say harshly because this is upsetting to me and I don't want to cry. When they televise the replay of the reaping tonight, everyone will make note of my tears and I'll be marked as an easy target, a weakling. I will give no one that satisfaction. Let go. I can feel someone pulling her from my back. I turn and see Gale has lifted Prim off the ground, and she is thrashing in his arms. Up you go, Catnip, he says in a voice he's fighting to keep steady. And then he carries Prim off towards my mother. I steel myself and climb the steps. Well, bravo, gushes Effie Trinket. That's the spirit of the games.
Thank you very much. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about my own personal experience with Speakers Forum. Believe it or not, I actually did really terribly. So I lost in the classroom round, mostly because I spent the majority of my time during the prep trying to make this one piece work that when you read the full thing was 40 minutes. Because it's a short story. You think, like, oh, a short story, you read through it, maybe 10, I can cut that down really easy to be within time. And I just couldn't. So I picked kind of a different piece that I wasn't as well prepared for or liked as much, and I lost very badly. But I went through and I then took this long piece, and I worked for essentially this last summer to break it down into an interpretive reading that I could use in Australia. And I did, actually, and I did pretty well. So if you lost in the first rounds here today, or if you feel like you did like a really bad job, no worries, come to Forensic Union. There's plenty of places where you can compete in interpretive reading with either different pieces or with pieces that you wanted to compete in. Yes, and I guarantee you that you were not the worst one, even if you feel like you were, because I'm going to tell you 2 of the worst interpretive readings that I have ever heard from other people. So the first one being somebody at one of the public speaking tournaments for Forensic Union. They went there, and their piece, in order to try and draw emotion from the judges, they had to cry in it, which was a bold decision. If you can make yourself cry in your interpretive reading, that's a win for you. Great job. But they couldn't. And there's nothing more awkward than watching someone do their interpretive reading and just trying so hard to squeeze the tears out and just not being able to. So that was really awkward to watch. The other one was at International. Somebody from South Africa went to do an interpretive reading from The Color Purple. And I don't know whether you've read The Color Purple, but it's in Creole slang for the majority of it. And he had a very thick South African accent. And those two don't really meld, and it was essentially unintelligible. So if they could understand the words of your speech and you didn't try to cry but fail, you still did better than that. On this note, I'm going to introduce our final speaker, who certainly has done better than that, Andrew Holland.
Has there ever been a moment in your life where you were so desperate for something you begged incessantly? This is exactly what happened to Billy Bibbit in Ken Kesey's novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. While living in a mental institution, the patients break the rules by throwing a party late at night. During this time, they force a stuttering boy named Billy into bed with a prostitute. This excerpt comes from the next morning when the nurse of the hospital catches him. William Bibbit! She tried so hard to sound cold and stern. William Bibbit! Good morning, Miss Ratchet. Not even making any attempt to get up and button his pajamas, he took the girl's hand in his and grinned. This is candy. The nurse's tongue clucked to her bony throat. Billy, I am so ashamed for you. Billy wasn't awake enough to respond much to her shaming, and the girl was fussing around looking under the mattress for her nylons, moving slow and warm-looking after sleep. Every so often, she would stop her dreamy fumbling and look up and smile at the icy figure of the nurse standing there with her arms crossed, then feel to see if her sweater was buttoned, and go back to tugging for her nylon caught between the mattress and the tile floor. They both moved like fat cats full of warm milk, lazy in the sun. I guess they were still fairly drunk, too. "Oh, Billy," the nurse said like she was so disappointed. "A woman like this? A cheap lowlife?" The loud talk and laughter swirled around the nurse. She looked from Billy and the girl to the bunch of us behind her. The enamel and plastic face was caving in. She shut her eyes and strained to calm her trembling. Concentrating, she knew this was it. Her back to the wall. When her eyes opened again, they were small and still. "What worries me, Billy," she said, "is how your poor mother is going to handle this." She got the response she was after. Billy flinched and put his hand to his cheek like he'd been burned with acid. "Mrs. Bibbitt's always been so proud of your discretion. I know she has. This is going to disturb her terribly. You know how she is when she gets disturbed, Billy. You know how ill the poor woman can become. She's very sensitive, especially concerning her son. She always spoke so proudly of you. She always, His mouth was working. He shook his head, begging her. "You don't need..." Billy, she said. "Your mother and I are old friends." "No," he cried. His voice scraped the white, bare walls of the seclusion room. He lifted his chin so he was shouting at the moon of the light in the ceiling. "No!" We stopped laughing. We watched Billy folding into the floor, head going up, knees coming forward. He rubbed his hand up and down that green pant leg. He was shaking his head in panic like a kid that's been promised a whipping just as soon as the willow was cut. The nurse touched his shoulder to comfort him. The touch shook him like a bow. "Billy, I don't want her to believe something like this of you, but what am I to think?" Don't tell Miss Ratchet. "Billy, I have to tell. I hate to believe you would behave like this, but really, what else can I think? I find you alone on a mattress with this sort of woman?" "No, I didn't. I was..." His hand went to his cheek again and stuck there. She did." "Billy, this girl could not have pulled you in here forcibly." She shook her head. "Understand, I would like to believe something else, for your poor mother's sake." The hand pulled down his cheek, raking long red marks. She did. He looked around him. "And McMurphy, he did, and Harding, and the rest, they teased me and called me things." Now his face was fastened to hers. He didn't look to one side or the other, but only straight ahead at her face, like there was a spiraling right there instead of features, a hypnotizing whirl of cream, white and blue and orange. He swallowed and waited for her to say something, but she wouldn't. Her skill, her fantastic mechanical power flooded back into her, analyzing the situation and reporting to her that all she had to do was keep quiet. "They made me, please, Miss Ratchet. She checked her beam, and Billy's face pitched downward, sobbing with relief. She put a hand on his neck and drew his cheek to her stretched breast, stroking his shoulder, while she turned a slow, contemptuous look across the bunch of us. "It's all right, Billy. It's all right. No one else is going to harm you. It's all right. I'll explain to your mother." She continued to glare at us as she spoke. It was strange to hear that voice, soft and soothing, warm as a pillow, coming from a face as hard as porcelain. "All right, Billy, come along with me. You can wait over here in the doctor's office. There's no reason for you to be submitted to sitting out in the day room with these friends of yours."
Great job, Andrew. I used One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in my thesis. I love that book. All right. So I'm here supposed to announce that we have another few people that we would like to recognize. Thank you to the tech crew and to Mr. Kravitz for the sound and video of this event. Thank you also to all the English 4 teachers who support this wonderful program. Yesterday, in the Speakers Forum semifinals, 12 Form 4 students, the top 2 readers from each of the English 4 classes, competed for the slots in today's finals. Please join me in thanking the faculty judges of the semifinals panel, Ms. Bailey, Mr. Levine, Ms. McKee, Dr. Pierce, and Forensic Union Officer Ariba Memnon. Thank you. It was a 2-hour judging marathon, so they certainly deserve it. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Monroe to the stage to recognize this year's Speakers Forum semifinalists.
As I call your name, and these are people who competed in the semifinals yesterday but didn't quite make it to the finals. As I call your name, please stand and remain standing to be recognized. Charlotte Sear. Emma Kate Johansson. Eric Jones. Linda Hu. Talene Norsigian. Mackenzie Peel. And Avery Sutton. Thank you. Now, it's just going to take a couple of minutes for our judges to finalize their decisions, and then we'll announce the winners. Connor?
So like I mentioned briefly in my last speech, I just went to Australia. There was a lot of really cool things there. One of them being the platypus, which was my main goal for the speech. Yes, I told my teachers I was there for a public speaking and debate competition, but really I was there to go see a platypus. That was the goal of the trip. That was the main factor of me going. When I was there, I actually did see one. There was a Taronga Zoo trip. We saw them. They're super cool, a lot smaller than you would think, only like this big, super adorable. They got the duck bills, and something I learned that was really interesting. They close their eyes when they're swimming underwater, which of course you do. But their duck bills have these weird semi-electromagnetic sensor things in it that sense motion. So as they're like swimming in the water, they like wave their heads around like that, and it senses where the bugs are. So they know where to go and like grab the bugs, even though their eyes are closed. I just thought that was neat. Another thing that they have in Australia that they don't have in America is the slang cheers, which I thought was the best thing ever, and I wish it was in America because it was amazing. Essentially, what it is in Australia, every time you would casually say thank you to someone for something you already expect them to do, you instead say cheers. So like if you're ever like at a restaurant and you pay with a 20 and you only bought $19.95, so they give you your nickel back. You're so like, oh, thank you. But you're not really thanking them because what were they going to do, not give you change? No, of course not. It's what you expect them to do, but they do it anyways. So you recognize that with, instead of thank you, the much more effective and kind of fun thing to say is cheers, mate, which is just the fun part of being in Australia. I love that. So I still probably have 30 seconds to a minute left, so I'm just going to take this time to plug Forensic Union. 2 of the finalists today came here today. They came from Forensic Union. Forensic Union is a great time. We meet every Tuesday from 6 to 7. We eat pizza. We do a variety of public speaking and debating events. We have a debate coming up April 30th, Deerfield, which we're going to need 2 people for. So if you want to come through and go to this Deerfield debate, come to Forensic Union. If you want to learn how to improve your interpretive reading skills, come to Forensic Union. If you want to just have a good time on a Tuesday night, hang out with your friends in the spring when you have less work to do, come to Forensic Union. Essentially, the thesis of this thing is please come to Forensic Union. All right, can you say it with me now? What are you going to do next Tuesday? That was very unenthused, but I'll take it. Good job, everyone. Yeah, so is that it? Are we good? Mr. Monroe is tabulating. Okay, so we're going to wait for some tabulations. Anyone in the audience have a particularly funny pun that I missed? Feel free to stand up and yell it. Go for it.
Why is abbreviation such a long word?
Why?
Why?
Anybody else? Why? Oh, so she said, Connor, why is abbreviation such a long word? Why? Why? Like the letter. Okay. Does anybody else have any puns? Because at this point, I'm just rapidly filling time. A joke, kind of a meme within the forensic union, is that a lot of the times you get impromptus, you have nothing that you can actually fill time to talk about, so you talk about something that you know a lot about. The Canadians do this in an obsessive way that's really annoying, but most of the time, people just do it when they need to fill time in their speech, which is exactly what I need to do until Mr. Monroe is done tabulating. Yes, here's a pun.
Why does Pinocchio always lie? Why? It's no skin off his nose.
All right, that's pretty good. Good pun. Yes. Nothing like a poop joke. Classic. All right, so as I was going to say, my thing that I like to go to in impromptus is the Astro Chimps program for America in the late 50s and early 60s. So essentially, you're going through, like the Russians launched Sputnik, we're trying to get our first man into space, the first American into space, and there's all this crazy stuff going on, and we're doing helmet testing on monkeys. Because we're gonna launch these things into space to see how it reacts to live organisms. Because if the monkeys go up there, they die these tragic deaths, get irradiated, and then come back mutated monsters, we're not gonna go send people up there. Of course, they're not going to, but that doesn't change the fact that we're doing these tests on them. Part of the fun with the Astro Chimps is that the research was entirely irrelevant. So what they were doing was helmet testing. So they would essentially line a monkey up, put it on a chair, put it in a version of what the human space helmet was going to look like, and then they'd smash something into it really aggressively, like kind of a battering ram, right into the side of a monkey's head to test the helmet. But what's kind of neat is that, or neat in a really kind of sad way, is that the helmets testing done by the Astro Chimps program was entirely irrelevant because monkeys have really thick skulls. They're designed so they can fall out of trees, and humans have really kind of thin skulls because, I don't know, we're weak and frail. So that's my plug about the Astro Chimps. Can you tell I've run out of ideas? Yes, you can. So tabulation, what a fun word. Lots of uses for the word tab. Now, tabs, you have them on your binders. You got your binder dividers. Those are called tabs. Mr. Monroe! What a great time for him to come back in and announce the winners of the Speakers Forum. Thank you. Oh, I'm still here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you can see these names here?
Yes, I can.
Okay. These are their places right here.
Mr. Monroe's going to go get the plaques, and I'm going to read through the Speakers Awards in the order of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So coming in 5th place is John B. Second. A round of applause. Right here in 4th place, we have Sophie Overstreet. Coming in 3rd place, we have Dan Carroll. I'm going to try not to pull a Steve Harvey with this one, but in 2nd place, we have Andrew Holland. And in 1st place, winning the Speakers Forum, we have Erin Bowen.
Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Look. Show your plaques, please. Thank you. Thank you, Connor. Okay. Yeah, you can have a seat. Thanks. You're very welcome. First of all, I want to No, well, oh, okay, I'm sorry. What's this? No, that's fine, that's fine. You want Carol in the picture here? Okay, great. Okay. Great. Okay. First of all, I just want to thank Connor O'Loughlin for what a wonderful job he did. Thank you, Connor. And second, Carol Guggens wanted to say just something quickly. Carol.
Just one story about Bob, my husband. When he was a teenager, a long time ago, he wanted to borrow the family car. And that took negotiating with his dad. And his father's name was Fred Guggens, and he debated at Cambridge. And the debate was about the admission of Russia as a nation. So it was very timely. Not as timely as Bob wanting the car. And so he thought, of course, my dad is going to ask me why I want the car. So I have to come up with a good one. And he did. He wanted the car to date Anne Rutenberg. And Anne Rutenberg's father was head of McDuffie School. Of course, Bob was at Wilbraham, so there weren't any girls at Wilbraham. So you had to go a little bit afar. Do you think he won that debate? What do you think? Or what method did he use to get that car? Very interesting. This was the start of how important debate was to Bob Guggens. So, come to Forensic Union.
Carol, thank you very much for that story. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. One more thing before you leave, just a real quick plug for the Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Contest. It's due today. Thank you.